Welcome back to another video, and today we got our Week 14 Top 25 College Football Rankings. Now, I'm going to make this clear right out the gate. This is a pre-recorded video. I'm recording this on Thursday, November 21st, so about a week. Typically we drop these Tuesday, and they'll still come out Tuesday, but I am out of town this whole week, so when you guys are seeing this, I'm out of town for Thanksgiving. But I wanted to make sure I kept with the schedule, so I pre-recorded a couple of these videos. So this week, I'm not going to know any of the results of last week, and obviously there's huge games: Ohio State, Indiana, BYU, Arizona State, Notre Dame, Navy, a lot of these teams I have here on the thumbnail. But yeah, I won't know any of these results, so I won't be able to really recap the games, but I did still want to make my Week 14 game prediction. So this isn't as much of a top 25 rankings as it is more of a Week 14 game predictions. We're also just going to be using the top 25 that I had from last week. So kicking things off with number 25, it is going to be Washington State. When looking at Washington State, they're 8-2 at least up to this point. I do think they'll beat Oregon State. I think it could be an interesting game. So I think I'll just do this for every team. I think they should be 9-2 heading into this week, and I think there's a good chance they finish 10-2. I don't really see much promise here in Wyoming. I mean, I don't know. I'm just not very excited about them. Washington State, I think, a successful season after being left for dead. But yeah, Wyoming's 2-8 right now. I don't think they I don't think they have really any chance of winning this game. It's at home too, so I'll take Washington State here. Number 24, I have Illinois. Now, this Rutgers game definitely intrigues me. I think they could drop that game. I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up losing here. And if they did, they wouldn't be in the top 25. But I'll keep them in for now just because I don't know the result. But yeah, again, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost this game. Rutgers is favored by 1. It's been kind of flip-flopping who's favored by 1. So kind of interesting there. Um, with the rivalry game here on the road against Northwestern, I think this one could actually be closer than maybe some people think. I saw Northwestern against Ohio State. They didn't look terrible. I know they lost 31-7 a couple weeks back. They didn't look too bad, though. I do think Illinois will win. I think it'll be a low-scoring type game, but I think Northwestern may keep it closer than some may think. And I would love to see the spread on this game, and really all these games, but unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. Kansas State, I'm assuming they beat Cincinnati. If they lose 3 in a row, that's just pathetic. But they have a kind of a huge game. They're on the road against Iowa State. Iowa State will, at this point, I believe, still be fighting for an outside chance to get in the Big 12 championship game because they're, right there in it with BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, and then, of course, the Cyclones. Yeah, so I think this might be a more important game for Iowa State overall. So I will go ahead and take them there. I think, both these teams are kind of even, and I'm kind of done with Kansas State. I mean, I don't know. I've been holding out hope for them ever since they lost to BYU. I mean, when they went on that stretch of wins, I was still saying they're the team I'm most confident of in the Big 12. Now, at this point, I mean, honestly, if they played Colorado again, I'd probably take Colorado. I mean, Kansas State's just kind of fallen off here towards the end of the season. Um, I do think Iowa State will be playing for a little more. They also get it at home. I think it would be kind of 50-50. So the fact that, one, they have more at stake and it's at home there, I'll go ahead and take them to beat Kansas State. Arizona State sitting at number 22. Now, this is definitely subject to change because they have a huge game against BYU. So either they lose and they're out of Big 12 championship contention, or they make some chaos, take down BYU, set up a matchup what looks to be like Colorado versus Arizona State in the Big 12 championship game. Nobody thought this was even a possibility, and now it's a very real possibility. Um, that would just be something, crazy if we saw that. Now, this is one of the biggest games of the week. I wish I could see this result when making this video. Um, definitely would help me out a little bit here. You know, trying to talk about these storylines. Going into this game at Arizona, Arizona was a team I was very high on in the preseason. I thought they'd win 8 or 9 games. I believe I predicted, maybe even 10. I don't know. I was very high on them. Fafita Tetero McMillan is looking like a top 5 NFL draft pick. He's even with their disappointing year, he's had a great year. I actually think Arizona gets it done. I don't know. I just have a really weird feeling about this game. These two teams will get up for this game. I mean, this is a huge rivalry. I think with it being at Arizona, with a chance to spoil potentially Arizona State's season, I think Arizona gets up for it. I think with the talent they have, I think they can go out there and win. Especially, I mean, it's at home too. I don't know. I just have a weird feeling about this game, but I mean, if Arizona State, I'd feel more confident about this prediction if Arizona State lost to BYU, because then they'd be out of things and not really have too much to play for besides obviously wanting to beat their rivals. But if they did win this game, maybe I'd reconsider this prediction. Because if they beat BYU, I'd probably say they'd beat Arizona. I I did predict BYU to win this game though. So we'll ultimately see. I'll make sure to keep you guys updated on X. Make sure you go down there. It's linked in the description. Make sure you follow that. I'll be using that quite a bit. Iowa State, I think they have a very tough matchup here, or they had one, at least I'm assuming, at Utah. I predicted that to be a very close game. I did say they would. Actually, I'm not sure who I predicted to win. I might have picked Utah to win. I'm not sure. I do think Iowa State, though, will be playing for more than Kansas State at this point. I think with it being at home, two teams that I believe are pretty evenly matched, I'll go ahead and take the Cyclones there. Number 20, I have Tulane, who I actually can see their previous game because they were on bye last week. So now going into this game, they're sitting at 9-2. They're sitting with a very good chance to actually, I believe they've clinched the American Championship game already. Their only losses are to a ranked Kansas State team. At least I have them ranked, and then a road game against an SEC team. I mean, they've looked really good. They've been I mean, you look at their point totals this year. I mean, it's ridiculous. 52, 27, 19, 41, 45, 71, 24, but then 45, 34, 52, 35. I mean, this offense is just electric. I think it gets Memphis though. Memphis, people don't know this. Memphis is 9-2. Memphis has had a very good under the radar season. I think Tulane wins. I think it'll be a very close game though. Very, you know, high scoring for both teams. I think this one will come down to the wire. This is actually one of the more underrated games of this week. I mean, I know Tulane is clinched in for that American Championship, but I think people might be sleeping on this game. This is going to be a very fun game to watch. Number 19, I have South Carolina. I'm assuming they blew out Wofford. I mean, if they didn't, it's probably cause for concern, especially with their road game against one of their biggest rivals in Clemson, who, I mean, Clemson has had a bit of a disappointing season, I guess, as well. I mean, South Carolina honestly has been impressing me with the way they've played. They probably should have beat LSU. They probably should have beat Alabama as well. They blew out Texas A&M. They blew out Vanderbilt. They beat Missouri. I mean, they have a pretty solid resume. The only loss I think they should have taken is probably Ole Miss because the Alabama, they got the onside kick at the end of the game and had a chance to take the lead. I know through the pick they should have won. The LSU game, they were there the whole time and they just got unlucky with that one. But going into Clemson, this is a huge rivalry game. Both these teams are going to be up for this one, and this is going to be ranked on ranked. I think I don't know. I South Carolina has been so hot recently. I mean, you look at they've won 4 in a row. I believe they beat. I'm assuming they beat Wofford this past week, so they're probably 5 wins in a row. They're so hot, but I don't know. I think it's going to be a very close game. I'm going to take Clemson to win just because it's in their stadium, but this one really could go either way. I'm not sure about how I feel about this prediction. I don't know. I'm very back and forth on this one. This one could definitely go the right, cause South Carolina's been so hot, but Clemson I mean, they're not like a bad team. I don't know. I'm gonna take Clemson just because of the fact they're at home and the environment. Number 18, I have Army. Huge game this past week. This is one of the biggest games of this last week. I wish I could have seen what happened here before I had to record. I am assuming Notre Dame wins, but there is a slight chance Army just upsets them, shocks the world. If Army wins this game, there's a chance Army might. I mean, I know it's crazy to think. There's if Army beats Notre Dame, are we really like? Can Army get up into the playoffs? I mean, they probably if let's say hypothetically Army beats Notre Dame and then Boise State goes out in the Mountain West Championship game and loses. Army probably gets in as the 12 seed. It's not all out of the realm of possibilities. If Boise State does win their conference, does Army still get in if they're 13-0 with a win over Notre Dame and over Tulane as well, who's also ranked? There's a chance. I mean, it's crazy to think. I do think Notre Dame will win, but just playing out the possibility that that could really happen. I do think they'll beat UTSA though. No real problems. This isn't a very intriguing game. They got the Army Navy game, coming up, so that's kind of interesting. The Navy was actually ranked at one point, so um, that should be a fun game. It usually is. Um, Number 17, Clemson. We kind of just went over them. I'm assuming they beat Citadel. I'm not really worried there. So they should probably be 9-2 entering this game. Taking on an 8-3 South Carolina, huge rivalry game. I think they win just because it's at home. I think Cade Klubnik can do enough here. I mean, they just beat Pitt on the road. I mean, you could argue South Carolina is better than Pitt, but they won't have to go on the road this time. I don't know. Clemson's kind of one of those teams I really can't figure out this year. I mean, their best win is probably at Pitt, which isn't great. The two decent teams they've played, which are Georgia and Louisville, they've gotten handled, and Louisville's not even ranked anymore. So I don't know. I'm gonna say they win just because of the fact it's at home. I could be wrong though. Like I said, South Carolina is one of the hottest teams in the country right now. Number 16, I have Colorado. Another one of those sneaky good games from last week that I wish I could have seen the outcome because I think this is a very real upset potential here on the road against Kansas. Kansas is one of the hottest teams. I did predict Colorado to win, but I'm saying, and I said this last week. I said the at Texas Tech game would be close. I said the Utah game would be close, and neither of those were close. They blew them out. So maybe I'm just wrong, and maybe Colorado goes in there and handles business again. Like I said, I'm assuming they win. Travis Hunter is looking like he's going to win the Heisman as well. Whether you agree or disagree, he is likely going to win it. I'm not even sure who I would pick. It's either him or Genti. I would have to really think about that, and I have been thinking about it, and I don't know. It's very, very close for me. At this point, I don't if so. Let's say Colorado beats Kansas. I'm not sure if they would be clinched for the Big 12 championship game. So I think they would go out and take care of Oklahoma State. That is assuming they beat Kansas. If they lose to Kansas, I believe there's still a chance they get in the Big 12 championship game. So I think they'll beat Oklahoma State. What a disappointing season from them. I mean, a lot of people thought they could win the Big 12. I didn't. I didn't say. I thought they'd be the third best team in the Big 12, but man, I don't know what happened to them. Ollie Gordon just kind of. I don't know. It's weird to see their fall off. I mean, they have good players too. I really confused what happened there, but I do think Colorado would beat Oklahoma State. Texas A&M. Another one of those sneaky good games from last week at Auburn. I pointed this out in last week's video. This is, in my opinion, a prime spot for a trap game. Going into Auburn's never easy to do, especially with your season on the line against Texas the next week, who is also one of your biggest rivals and a top 3 team in the country. I mean, this Texas game, I've been hyping this up since Texas A&M beat LSU, so that's what 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. I mean, I've been talking about this game and game's implications for a while, and I've been right about it. I mean, this is likely going to decide who gets in. Well, I mean, it will decide who is going to get in to the SEC championship game, and whoever loses will not. I believe whoever loses does not get in. This is obviously more important for A&M than it is for Texas, because if Texas loses, they'll finish with 2 losses. And not make the SEC championship game. So 10-2 in Texas probably gets in. If A&M loses this game, though, they'll be at 9-3, assuming they beat Auburn, which I don't think is guaranteed. Um, and with 3 losses, I mean, the way that it's shaping out, I don't think they would get in there. So, huge game for both teams. The fact it's in College Station, if this was a night game, I'll be honest. If this was a night game, I would pick A&M. The reason I'm gonna go Texas is I don't know. A&M's best one is LSU, who maybe it's Missouri, LSU or Missouri, who neither of them I believe should be ranked. LSU isn't ranked, Missouri is. I don't understand that. I don't know. I mean, they got blown out by South Carolina. They lost to Notre Dame. I know that was a while ago, so I'm not really looking at that. Um, I don't know. I feel like I can't trust A&M, and I don't know if I can trust Texas either. I mean, you look at Texas; they haven't played anyone as well. I'm just gonna trust Ewers and the experience there, and over whoever it is, it's probably gonna be Marcel Reed, which I think is the right call. But if it is Weigman, I would trust Ewers over him either way. I'll go with Texas just because, I mean, talent wise, it's pretty even. I don't know. I can't see A&M winning. Well, I'll take that back. I can see A&M winning this game. This is a very tough game to predict. I just personally think what I think is more likely to happen is Texas goes in there and wins. But like I said, this game is definitely more important for A&M, and they get it at home. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe A&M does win. But we'll see. When looking at SMU, I don't know why the 0-0 is green. I forgot to change the color of that. My apologies. It's not that big of a deal. I'm assuming they beat Virginia. I'm not too worried there. So SMU at this point would be clinched for the ACC championship game. I don't think that gives them any room to slack off, though. They're going to need to win that Cal game, just to give themselves a better shot there at getting in the playoffs and getting a higher seed. And I do expect them to beat Cal. I'm not too worried here. So that sets up a pretty good, a pretty important ACC championship game, basically a play-in game between them and Miami. Assuming Miami wins out, if Miami loses another, they could be playing Clemson. But either way, the ACC only, I mean, at this point, the ACC is only getting one team in. If Miami loses another one, they're not going to get in, if we're being honest. Number 13, I have BYU. Like I said, that at Arizona State game, huge implications for the Big 12. I wish I could have seen what happened there before I recorded this. I'll say I think BYU will beat Houston either way, no matter the outcome. With Arizona State, it's a little bit different, but BYU Houston's not, a crazy rivalry. So, I mean, it is somewhat, but it's not. Arizona State is definitely a bigger rivalry, I guess you could say. I'll say BYU wins that. I just think they're the better team. Houston's not really anything special this year. Number 12, I have Boise State. I'm assuming they beat Wyoming last week. I don't see any reason for them to have lost. Ashton Genty, love to see what he's going to do because he's still trying to get that Heisman, so maybe he goes crazy or something. I do expect them to beat Oregon State, though. Oregon State, not a great team this year. They're not even going to make a bowl game, it looks like. So Boise State should likely finish the regular season 11-1. And I'm interested to see who they play in the Mountain West Championship game. Will they get UNLV? I don't even know how that conference is shaping up. I should probably look at that real quick before we before we move on. So let me just pull this up real quick and see, because I really want to dive as deep as I can. I talk as much as I can just because. So Colorado State, I forgot about them. They're actually still undefeated in conference. So UNLV is hoping for a Colorado State loss. Um, I mean, UNLV is actually ranked um, in the college football playoff rankings. I don't have them ranked, but they are there. Um, I mean, either way, Colorado State or UNLV, whoever Boise gets, those two teams are both, very good teams. So Boise definitely not, going to be easy to win their championship. But I've been saying this for the past couple weeks. It's looking like Boise will be the group of five team. I do assume they win out the rest of the season. With Miami, they're kind of a wild card. I mean, maybe they lost again. If they did, that's just embarrassing. But they've kind of been, sneaking by a lot of these bad teams. Um, I mean, the fact that they got out of the Virginia Tech, the Cal game, the Louisville game, the Duke game, all with wins, that's kind of crazy to me. They finally lost to Georgia Tech. They were on the bye 2 weeks ago, I guess, for you guys. Last week they played Wake Forest. Um, I'm I'm guessing they beat Wake Forest. I mean, Wake Forest isn't anything crazy. Miami's actually what? Well, you know what the score was. Miami was favored by 24 against Wake Forest, so I'm assuming they win. But they have a road game against Syracuse, who's 7-3. Syracuse was one of my sleeper teams heading into this season. I know that was a way back, but I was pretty high on Syracuse coming into the year with them having Kyle McCord, one of the top transfer classes of the portal session. So with Syracuse, they're not a cakewalk whatsoever. I think it actually could be a pretty close game. I'll say Miami wins just because I mean Xavier Restrepo, Cam Ward, um, I mean their offense is loaded. I know Syracuse is a very good team though as well. Maybe Damian Martinez, does something. It seems like he hasn't really done all that much this year for them. I mean, I don't know. Cam Ward, though, I think is the difference maker here. I think I trust him more than Kyle McCord, but it is on the road, so this could actually. I would have. I really wouldn't be surprised if Miami lost this game, but I'll say they win. I'll trust the Hurricanes here. Number 10, I have Tennessee. Um, Pretty easy game last week. I'm assuming they beat UTEP. If they didn't, I mean they're 40.5 point favorites, so they beat UTEP. We can go ahead and say that. Going into this week, they'll be 9-2, and they're gonna have to go on the road against Vanderbilt. And we've seen what Vanderbilt can do. Vanderbilt's been one of the surprising teams this year. They've taken down Alabama already. They had a very close game with Texas. I mean, Vanderbilt's a very solid team here. Nothing to scoff at whatsoever. It is on the road. I think Tennessee though is playing for a whole lot more than Vanderbilt is. I mean, Vanderbilt has already clinched a bowl game. They're 6-4. They play on the road against LSU, so that could be a loss. Um, I mean, they've already clinched a bowl game though. Um, I think Tennessee gets it done. I think it'll be a very close game. Like I said, Vanderbilt's a very tough team, but I think defensively I think defensively for Tennessee that might be the difference maker. I mean, their defense is just so good. And Nico Yamaleava has kind of, he started. It was weird. It's kind of the opposite of what I said. He started off really well. Maybe that was just because of the competition he was playing, but he's kind of slowed since SEC play. I mean, you see what their point totals. I mean, ever since that Oklahoma game, 25, 14, 23, 24, 28, 33. It's not bad, but it's just, it's not 69, 51, 71 like he did the first 3 weeks of the game of not of the game of the season. Um, like I said, I think Tennessee wins just because they're playing for a whole lot more. I think, Tennessee is in a pretty tough spot because if assuming every team that's favored wins out, Tennessee is likely going to get left out of the playoffs. That's assuming though every team favored, which won't happen. So Tennessee can still very much get in, but if it does come down to, let's say Ohio State beats Indiana, let's say Alabama wins out, Ole Miss wins out, Georgia wins out, Tennessee wins out. I mean, there's 4 spots for those 5 teams. I'm assuming they'll put Georgia in. I'm assuming they'll put Ole Miss in. I'm assuming they put Indiana in. I'm assuming they put Alabama in. I thought about this scenario. Alabama is in line to play in the SEC championship game right now. because the winner of Texas A&M will be there, and then Alabama will be that second team. So I thought of this scenario that the committee has said they don't want to punish teams for losing in their conference championship game, but if let's say Texas beats A&M, if Texas gets Alabama in the SEC championship game, they win. Alabama falls to 3 losses, and then it's a conversation for that last spot between 2-loss Tennessee and 3-loss Alabama, and Tennessee beat Alabama. So that is a very interesting scenario that I think is pretty realistic to play out. Um, but ultimately, we'll see. It'll all work itself out. But that is definitely something interesting to look at. With Georgia, I mean, they're going to beat UMass. I'm assuming they beat Georgia Tech. This is always kind of a close game, though. But Georgia's offense looked so good against Tennessee. I mean, I was getting worried for them. The close game against Florida got dominated at Ole Miss. They came back against Tennessee and looked phenomenal. I mean, Georgia at their best is arguably the best team in the country. At their best. Now, at their worst, we've seen it already. I mean, they've lost twice this year. But they have a win over Clemson. They have a dominant win over Clemson. Dominant win on the road against Texas. Dominant win against Tennessee. Georgia has the best strength of schedule in the country. So Georgia, I mean, if they win out, they'll get in. There's not much to worry about here. I think they will win out against UMass and then Georgia Tech. Number 8, I have Ole Miss. Again, another one of these sneaky games from last week I wish I could have seen. At Florida is not a tough. At Florida, I'm sorry, is a very tough game regardless. And the way that DJ Lagwez looked, I wouldn't be surprised if Ole Miss dropped it. I think they'll win just because, I mean, I've been saying this a lot, but they're playing for so much more right now. Florida's not playing to get into the playoffs. Ole Miss is. They know that. And if Ole Miss wins out, they will likely get in. So Ole Miss, with that Georgia win, they just saved their season. I mean, I said that going in. That was a must-win game for them. They won. Then they had the bye. Last week they played at Florida. And, you know, I'm assuming they won. I predicted them to win. That's really all I can do. They were favored. Um, they were 11.5 point favorites. So I wouldn't be. I would expect Florida to cover that. But I think Ole Miss should win. The Egg Bowl is always tough to predict because this is always a close game. I'll say Ole Miss wins. Like I said, they're just playing for so much more than Mississippi State, and Mississippi State has been horrendous. I mean, the worst team in the SEC this year. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if this is close, just because I mean rivalry week in college football is just something else. So yeah, I'll say it's a close game, but I think Ole Miss should win. Number 7, Alabama. I'm assuming they beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma's kind of derailed over the season. This coming week against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, always a tough game for Alabama. They probably should have lost last year. They need a miracle. And on like what was it, 4th and 33, and they scored a touchdown. I mean, ridiculous stuff. Um, this year though, Auburn not looking great. I know Auburn wasn't great last year. But this year, I mean, Alabama with a loss is done. They're not going to lose this game. It's going to be a close, low-scoring game like it always is, even with Alabama's offense being so good. But they're not going to lose. I think Alabama should win. They also get it in Bryant-Denny, so I think it's safe to say the Crimson Tide. And assuming Alabama wins out, they're in line to play for the SEC championship game. So like I said, I mean, they should be fine if they get in there, even if they lose, unless, like I pointed out, that scenario plays out where Alabama has 3 losses and the team they're getting compared against for that last spot is 2-loss Tennessee, who beat them. So I think that's the only argument that you could have where if a team makes their conference championship game and loses, they could be punished. That is really the only scenario, though, I can think of in that case. So that would suck for Alabama. But again, it'll all work itself out. Number 6, I have Notre Dame. Like I said, this Army game is huge for Army. It's huge for Notre Dame. If Notre Dame if Notre Dame lost that game, they don't make the playoffs. I mean, there's no way they make the playoffs if they lost that game. I do think they won, though. I think they'll go into USC. It is kind of a rivalry game, though, on the road. USC's been all right. I know they benched their quarterback. They were good at one point, so I guess I'll say this is going to be a close game. I think Notre Dame should win. Number 5, I have Penn State. Penn State, not worried here. At Minnesota, I think they should win. Minnesota's actually 6-4, but Penn State's pretty heavy favorite in there. I'm assuming Penn State won that. And then looking at this Maryland game, I think Penn State should win. I'm actually really not worried about this game at all. Penn State should win out. They should finish 11-1, and they should get into the playoffs. I mean, assuming they win out. I mean, I've been saying this. This playoff is just, this schedule is just, I mean, what is, their best one is Illinois. I mean, that's not a terrible one, I guess. It is a ranked team, but I don't know. I mean, Penn State is benefiting from this bad schedule. They're likely going to finish 11-1. And they're going to get it to host a playoff game, which I think that atmosphere will just be electric for a playoff game. So I'm very excited to see that. But that's assuming they win out. You know, I'm not going to rule it out. Obviously, this is the story. This is what I was really upset. I mean, mostly just this game. As many of you may know, Ohio State is my favorite team, so I will be rooting for them, for Ohio State in this game, obviously, against Indiana. And you guys already know what happened here, which I wish I could, because then I could really dive into what this means for both teams. So first of all, let's assume Ohio State wins, because Ohio State is the heavy favorite in this game, and they're at home. And I predicted Ohio State to win. I did predict Indiana cover, but let's assume Ohio State wins. I think when looking at Indiana, assuming they beat Purdue, spoiler alert, I think they will beat Purdue. I think it'll be close-ish, but Purdue's the worst team in the Big Ten. I think they'll beat Purdue. Assuming Indiana lost to Ohio State, they'll be at 11-1, and that'll be that. They'll be at 11-1. They're not playing in the Big Ten championship game because that'll be Ohio State and Oregon. I think as long as they didn't lose by like 40 or no, I'll say as long as they didn't lose by like 30, even if it was like, I don't know, 20 points. I mean, that is still a lot. But I think even then, they probably deserve to get in. I mean, I know they're going to say the strength of schedule. But, I mean, they've blown everyone out besides Michigan. They've done what they've needed to do. When you play bad teams, you have to blow them out, and that's exactly what they've done throughout the course of the season. I think as long as they don't get absolutely hammered by Ohio State, which could happen, I mean, even if they do, I think they might still get in. I don't know. This is one of those where I wish I could see where the committee put them before I had to record this, because I would be very interested to see how far Indiana fell. Now I'll say this. If Indiana goes into Columbus, beats Ohio State probably still gets in. They'll be at, what, 10-2, assuming Ohio State beats Michigan, which, don't even get me started. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. If Indiana goes into Columbus, into the shoe, beats Ohio State, Indiana might, actually, I'll say this. If Indiana goes into the shoe, into Columbus, into Ohio State's own stadium and beats them, I would have Indiana at number 1 in the country, in my personal rankings. If Indiana does that, I would put Indiana at number 1. I would jump them ahead of, obviously I'd jump them ahead of Ohio State. I'd jump them ahead of Texas. I'd jump them even ahead of Oregon. I think if Indiana goes into Columbus and beats Ohio State, I'd put them at number 1. But I'll say this. I do think Ohio State will win. So, but I'm not going to rule that out. That's a possibility. Indiana's looked so good this year. All in all, you guys know what happened, so I just did this whole big rant. And you guys already know what happened. Jealous, I wish. But I do think Indiana would beat Purdue. They're the worst team in the Big Ten. Texas, I'm assuming they beat Kentucky. We talked about this game. I do think Texas wins. I think it's going to be very close. This is a huge game. If A&M loses, they're out of the playoffs. They get it at home as well. This is going to be a huge, huge game for both these teams. Whoever loses will not make the SEC championship game. I think if Texas loses, they probably still get in. But if, like I said, if A&M loses, their season's done. So maybe A&M wins. I've been kind of convincing myself to pick A&M. The thing is I don't know. I mean, Texas hasn't played anyone, but I just trust them a whole lot more than I do the Aggies. So I'll take them to win. But again, I think it's very close, and it could go either way. Number two, I have Ohio State. I'm hoping they just went out and blew out Indiana. It's kind of a win-win for me because if I'm obviously an Ohio State fan, so I want them to win. I hope they blow them out. I hope they beat them by 50. But if Indiana wins, there's a small part of me where I'll be like, okay, I'll give them. I mean, that's pretty impressive if they can do that. I'm not gonna deny that. If Indiana goes out into Columbus and beats Ohio State, that would just be great. Um, I mean, obviously, I would hate it, but like I said, a small part of me would be happy for him. Um, with Ohio State, you gotta beat Michigan this year. I mean, this has been just brutal. We've lost 3 years in a row after winning 8 in a row. People like to forget that, but recent is always going to matter more. Ryan Day is 1-3 against the Wolverines, and they get it at home. And Michigan is just an absolute train wreck this year. I hope Ohio State wins 158-0. I'll make a fair prediction. I mean, maybe this is too much just because of it being such a rivalry. I will say Ohio State's center is out for the year. That is, people aren't talking about this enough. That is a crucial loss for them. So maybe that comes back to bite them here against Indiana or Michigan because Michigan's D line is just still very good. Um, but if Ryan Day loses to Michigan, don't be surprised if he's fired after this year. If he loses to Michigan again, I would probably fire him as well. So the only thing with that is like, who do you replace him with? And that is a good question, but I think Ohio State should win. I mean, you got to pick them. Number one, Oregon. Oregon's one of those teams they got a bye this past week, so I actually know their previous game. One of only two teams didn't help me out very much, but this week, one of their biggest rivals, arguably their biggest rival. I mean, Oregon State might have something to say about it. I'm not gonna, you know, say who's bigger, who's not. But this is, Washington's gonna get up for this game. It is in Eugene, though. It is, Oregon's, playing for so much more. I think it'll be somewhat close. I mean, Washington's shown some flashes of being pretty good this year. They're not bad. They're pretty average. I'll say Washington keeps them, you know, they'll keep it around for a while. I will say though, Oregon should win this game, and they'll likely finish 12-0, like I've been saying since they beat Ohio State. Likely finish 12-0, and they will be playing for it. Well, they've already clinched a Big Ten championship berth, so they will be playing either Ohio State or Indiana, and there's still a small chance. I mean, it probably won't happen, but there's a small chance they get Penn State as well. So yeah, Oregon in a great spot. Even if they lose to Washington and they lose in the Big Ten championship game, they probably still get in. So Oregon's really the only team in the country that's clinched a playoff berth in my mind at this point. So yeah, Oregon will be seeing you in the playoffs, but that is going to do it for the Week 12 college football predictions. Not so much top 25 rankings, but I hope you enjoyed. Obviously, this was tough for me to, make pre-recorded. So if you enjoyed, make sure you go down there, leave a like, comment down below what you think about my predictions. Comment down below, if you just want to talk about the games from last week. I'll answer. I answer all of them. So make sure you subscribe if you're new. We're doing college basketball every Monday, college football every Tuesday, NFL every Wednesday. Typically it's NBA every Thursday, but couldn't do it this week because obviously I'm out of town. But next week, I'll say everything will be back to normal. No more pre-recorded stuff. But that is going to do it. Links in the description. As always, X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Make sure you follow those. Join those. Make sure you follow me on X. I'll be, tweeting a lot over there this week. But yeah, that is going to do it. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys tomorrow with another pre-recorded video. Week 13 NFL game prediction.